Coming up on Wrestling Life.
Confidence really, to me, it's courage, right? Confidence is courage. When you have courage, you take chances. When you take chances, that's when you can break barriers. That's when you can just do more than you even thought you could. So I had to have so much confidence in what I did on live TV every time I stepped into that ring, or any time I got in front of an audience. I had to have the courage to go, I may not know it all, but I'm going to share what I do know. And what I do know, I just have to know that that's enough.
Welcome to Wrestling Life with Ben Veal, the show that features real talk from real talent.
Welcome, my friends, to Wrestling Life with Ben Veal. It's great to have you all joining me today for a very special conversation and one that promises to be real, raw and inspiring. My guest is a WWE history maker and one of the most beloved personalities from the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression eras. My guest made history as the first woman to ring announce WrestleMania and also gave a record-breaking 3 musical performances at the Granddaddy of Them All. This barrier breaker exudes positivity and energy, and as well as being a celebrated singer, award-nominated podcast host, and legendary ring announcer in the worlds of pro wrestling and MMA, she is now also an international keynote speaker on a mission to help instill arena-level confidence into everyone she meets. My guest is, of course, the one, the only, the wonderful, it's Lilian Garcia, everybody. Lilian,
my gosh.
Hello.
Thank you. I love that. Thanks. I'm doing great. Thank you. I mean, even through the storm, right? I'm not going to say I'm not dealing with any storms, but I'm doing great because I'm still here, still fighting.
Absolutely. And I wish you could have ring announced yourself, really. I feel a bit weird doing a ring announce for Lilian Garcia, but I gave it my best shot.
Oh, you did a great job. Thank you.
Hey, maybe one day that'll be me in a WWE ring, but I think it's unlikely.
I don't know that's, oh my God, that is a crazy life. I mean, you got to have passion for that because of the way they beat themselves up every single day. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, look, we're recording this 25 years pretty much since your anniversary of joining WWE back in 1999. And you know, you and I, this is the second time we've recorded a podcast together. The first time was on my Good Journeys show. And, you know, I'm going to put the notes in the show notes here because we went very deep on that one. Very different conversation. We talked a lot about loss of, parents and dealing with bereavement and faith and self-identity. And it's a really special conversation. But today we're going to have a bit of fun and we're going to do lots more talking wrestling. And I want to talk about that night when you debuted, 1999, August 1999. Now, you told me before that you were very close to running for the exit signs, and we almost didn't see Lilian Garcia.
That's right.
Yet here you are now on the stage talking about arena-level confidence and inspiring that in other people. How long did it take you to feel confident inside that WWE ring, Lilian?
Oh man, it was a while. I mean, because I had to learn on the job. For anybody who hasn't heard, you know, they can go to your other podcast to hear the full story. But basically, you know, finding out at 3:30 that afternoon on my very first day on the job that I was going to be replacing the legend Howard Finkel with 0 training, and in front of 14 million people that at the time were watching around the world and 20,000 that were in the arena. It took everything I had to stay in my seat, to, have the courage to then walk into the middle of that ring when they told me 20 minutes before going live that I couldn't use cue cards. I mean, it literally took everything I had to muster up the courage to get in there and do it. I think that being able to get through that first night and not dying, gave me the courage to go, oh, I'm still here. Okay, I can do this. And what I did was control what I can control. And so I really talk about that. One of the things about arena level confidence is controlling what you can control. There's a lot of things that are outside of control. But what I could control was going home and memorizing all the weights, all the towns, start really kind of learning the sequence of things, trying to get a feel for it. But again, I had every time I walked in there, like it was brand new. I was learning on the job. It's like it's like a cashier at a cash register, and they're taught the buttons, but until you're actually doing it and get into a flow, you're just like pecking. But little by little, give yourself the opportunity to keep getting behind that register, and you will start getting it. And so that's what I kept just showing up. That's the main thing I really do preach about, is just keep showing up. Show up in your life no matter what, no matter how scared you are, and you will start getting into a flow. But it did take me a while. I'm not going to lie.
That's amazing, because you were such a natural at it. But what a lot of fans might not realize is that, you didn't, when you arrived in WWE at the height of the Attitude Era, you weren't really a huge fan of a product or particularly familiar with these huge names, were you? It was pretty new to you. Is that right?
Yeah, so I watched with my dad growing up as a kid, and I watched Andre the Giant. I watched Ric Flair. I don't know what, Blackjack Mulligan was somebody else that stuck out to me. And I'll never forget my dad also surprising me with tickets. And we went to the Township Auditorium in South Carolina. And it's wild because I went back there with my sister. She had some event because she was a Miss South Carolina. So all the Miss South Carolinas had this reuniting thing there, and it was there at the Township Auditorium. And I looked around and I went, I remember I sat in those bleachers right there. And that whole night just vividly came back to me. But then, I went to college and I just fell out of wrestling. So by the time when WWE came calling in that audition, that I wasn't looking for this, it's just an audition that came my way. And the best thing I did was take my agent's advice when he said, just go to the audition. You never know. It was awesome. It was awesome because it led me to this path. But yeah, I mean, when they were like, okay, so this is, who we want you to announce. And I'm like, who's The Rock? Who's Stone Cold? I don't know these people, which is crazy, right? You think about like these names that are so infamous now that are like so popular, but I didn't know who they were. So that was a crazy night.
It is crazy because, I mean, by the time you came in, they were mainstream, weren't they? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
The Rock and Stone Cold, they were on the covers of like Entertainment Weekly and stuff. I mean, WWE had blown up to huge levels by the time you walked in the door. I just think it's wonderful that actually you walked in kind of pretty naively, not really knowing who these huge stars were, but suddenly you had to ring announce them with enthusiasm. I think that's wonderful.
I love God puts us in certain situations. We don't understand why it's happening in the moment. But think about it. Now that I've chosen this path of speaking to people, of really trying to educate people with the lessons that I've learned, right? Just pay it forward to me. I can now teach on these sink or swim situations. I mean, if anything, that was a sink or swim situation, and I was doing it on live television, right? I can teach about, you don't have to be 100% ready to seize an opportunity. So many people don't want to move forward. They're like, I'm not ready. Nope, I'm not ready. And I'm like, no, you got to do it. And then use whatever you have in your back pocket from all the experiences that you've been through in life. Use that to get through it, and then go home and start studying and start learning and just keep showing up. And so I'm the perfect example of that, but I wouldn't be the perfect example had it been completely opposite. Had I known all these people, had I known that, them giving me a month to prepare for that position, and so I'm like, I am actually glad that I went through it, even though during the time I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm not gonna lie.
Can you remember your audition and who they had you announce or how it worked? Because I've heard stories over years like Eric Bischoff having to like interview a broomstick or sell a broomstick or something like that. Like, what was your audition experience like?
I had to sell a roll of tape. So, and I couldn't sell it. It was black, and I couldn't sell it as tape. and they don't give you any time to think about it. So basically, and I found out why they do that, because it's live TV. And so they need to know how quickly can you think on the spot, which is why they don't give you any time to think about it. So basically they handed me a roll of tape. They're like, okay, you've got 1 minute to sell this, but you can't sell it as tape. Ready, go. So that's it. You're just like holding this black roll of tape. You're like, and so the first thing that came up to me was making bracelets out of it, making like Xena bracelets out of it. And then I had like 30 seconds left. And I'm like, when you're at this party and your pants, you realize you didn't put on a belt and your pants are falling down. No problem. You just roll the tape underneath your shirt. You put your shirt over it. Seamless. Your pants are up. We're good. And then they're like counting me down to 10 seconds. I'm like, the next time you look at this, don't look at it as just tape, because it's so much more.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I was like, everybody started applauding. I'm just like, where did that come from? But it showed them. It showed them that I could think on the spot. And man, did I have to think on the spot. Live TV, there's nothing like it. And Ben, sometimes I wondered, why am I putting myself in this position? Because my heart, no matter how many times I did this job, even after 15 years there and then 4 years at PFL, before that light went on, my heart was just like, I'm like, can you see it? Can you see it? Because it is like beating so hard, right? I kept thinking like you could actually see it. But what a rush. When you get past that and you accomplish it, right? And you do it, what a rush that you get. And that's what kept me coming back.
I can identify completely. I mean, I'm probably 65 episodes into podcasts now. Every time before the little green button goes on here, I get this little kind of adrenaline surge, and you get this moment of anxiety and think, what am I doing? And then it starts, and it's always great. But it's always, I think, the build up rather than the moment itself. I mean, when you're talking now and doing your keynotes, speaking around arena level confidence, for anyone that's kind of yet to hear one of your inspiring talks, and you shared quite a few of these online, what do you tend to talk about, and who are you aiming your talks at, Lilian?
Well, because I feel like I can talk to just a vast majority of people, because at WWE, I used to go into schools and talk about anti-bullying, like we did the Be a Star campaign, right? And so I was bullied in school. And so I really helped the kids, if you're being bullied, how to handle that, how to get through that. So it doesn't scar you. And then also I speak to the bullies. I'm not going to hold back, as to why hurt people hurt people. A lot of those bullies are just very, very insecure. You don't know what's going on in their life. And at home, a lot of times they don't feel like anything. At home, they're not valued. They're not loved. And so they get into an environment of feeling important at school and thinking like, okay, this is where I'm really going to dominate, and this is where I'm going to mean something. And they think that they have to bully in order to be important. And so I do speak to that. But then, I was an ambassador for Susan G. Komen. So I spoke to a lot of the women there and how to handle, breast cancer, and what I saw my mom and how she battled breast cancer, and the importance of getting examinations and speaking to women in general. I love speaking to women. So I do speak to women, whether it's in corporate or whether it's girls in school, whether it's like juniors and seniors or college, and the things that I've learned. And I even stop. It's funny because I don't just do it on stage. There were 2 girls that were heading to a prom. You see them all dressed up. And I gave them some advice as to how to handle themselves at the prom and how to not get into trouble, right? How to avoid some pitfalls. Let me tell you, Ben, they looked at me. They're like, oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you. We love you so much. Thank you for doing that. These are 2 complete strangers, but I felt it in me to share what I've learned, to share to them. And then I said, I'm going to be praying for you guys tonight, that you may have an amazing time, but that you make the right choices. And so they're very appreciative of that. Then I go into corporations and I talk about, when I say arena level confidence, it's because confidence really, to me, gives us, it's courage, right? Confidence is courage. When you have courage, you take chances. When you take chances, that's when you can break barriers. That's when you can just do more than you even thought you could. So I had to have so much confidence in what I did on live TV every time I stepped into that ring or any time I got in front of an audience. I had to have the courage to go, I may not know it all, but I'm going to share what I do know. And what I do know, I just have to know that that's enough. And so I love going around and just teaching people what I've learned around my years. And to me, that's my way to give back in any way that I possibly can, because I've had people that have poured into me.
Yeah, I think, you've got such a gift there. I mean, I've gone from being a fan of you on your on-screen personality 25 years ago to, becoming friends. And you've given me so much kind of private encouragement over the last 6 months or so. And, I love surrounding myself with positive people who want to help other people. That's what I try and do. That's the whole point of these shows, is to try and inspire other people. And, as I said to you before, if it hadn't been for the blueprint that you laid with Chasing Glory, in particular, the beautiful episode you did with Bautista, which really struck a chord, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. I mean, did you realize, we're jumping massively ahead, but I'm going to ask you now, did you realize when you were doing Chasing Glory how much of an impact that show was having on people beyond the world of wrestling?
No, I didn't at the time. I mean, I just knew that I wanted to do this show. And when my dad was passing away, and I talked to him about an idea that I had in like 2004. And I said, I just really want to interview, these amazing superstars who I get to share the locker room with, and I get to hear the real stories and backstage with them. If people really knew what they have been through and how they got through it, I always felt like not only will people benefit, but they will become bigger fans of them, right? Because I think when we hear somebody's story of what they've been through, and it's like that heroic thing that would go, oh my gosh, you got through it. And then that gives other people hope. Well, if my favorite superstar went through all of this and they became a superstar, that means it doesn't matter that I'm going through all this. I can use this and I can still become something. So I had no idea what the impact was going to be of that show. But then when the letters started pouring in and the comments online, and they're like, you have no idea, you actually saved my life. I was going to commit suicide until I heard this story.
Wow. That's
when I went, whoa. And let me tell you, it was the hardest thing for me to put that show on hold. 2021, my mother passed away. And I had been through such a season of taking care of my dad all the way to the end when he passed, and then taking care of my mom all the way till she passed, and then dealing with a marriage that was falling apart at the time. I was like, I can't give this show the time and the energy that it deserves, because I was a shell of myself. So I think it's important to know when it's okay to step back and take a moment for yourself. Had I kept going, I think I would have definitely had a nervous breakdown. It was just too much to handle. And it was, it's like, as I was praying, it's like, God's like, I'm just telling you to put it on hold. It doesn't mean you can never bring it back, right? So I said hold, because I really would love to bring it back. People ask me about it all the time. And I've said, I will bring it back. And it's still something that I'm very excited about and in love with that show and the concept of the show. I think Chasing Glory now looks something different. It's starting to look like what we thought, the glory that we're chasing. It's wild what it's turned into. But I made a promise to myself that if I brought it back, or I should say when I bring it back, because I really do want to bring it back.
And I've been nagging you for months to bring it back. So, and it won't surprise you at all that as soon as I announced that you were coming on to Wrestling Life, I got message after message after message saying, ask her when Chasing Glory is coming back. So there's a lot of us out there who need that back in our life when it's the right time for you.
Okay. But here's the thing. I made a promise to myself that I would bring it back with a team. And the reason, and the right team. And the reason I say that is because a lot of it I was running on my own.
Yeah.
I had some help with like my editor, and I had this guy George that was helping me with the bios, but a lot of all the booking of the talent I was doing myself. I literally would set up the cameras, the lighting. I would do Ricky would do a lot of the editing, and then I'd come in, and then I'm like, oh, let's tweak this, let's tweak that, and then some of the editing, especially the audio files. People don't realize I did a lot of the editing of my own. Now, thank goodness I went to film school, so I knew how to do it. And I don't know if that made me feel like I have to do it because I know how to do it. And I learned just because you know how to do it doesn't mean you have to do it. Right. Yeah. So I said, no, this time around, when I bring it back, I'm going to start using the word when I bring it back, I'm going to line myself up with the team so that I don't burn out. Yeah. Because by the end of that 4th year, I literally, like I said, I know it having my father and my mother so sick, added on top of that, having a marriage that was, crumbling. That didn't help, but I still think it's the right decision. Have a team. I think it's important. Oh, so I mean, I am interviewing a team, by the way. I'm in the process right now of interviewing a team. So I will give you that.
Our good mutual friend Chris Van Vliet is always saying to me that the reason his content does so well now is because it's not him, it's a team who are making it work. I think,
good.
Good
to hear that.
The thing, you were so ahead of your time with podcasting, because a lot of people are doing podcasts how I'm doing them, which is via this allows me to speak with friends in America, so this works for me. But you have the studio set up, you have this really polished production. A lot of people weren't doing that back then. That's kind of become the norm for bigger podcasts now. But you were quite an early adopter of the whole in-person, intimate conversation. I think that's why they work so well.
I definitely know that's why it works so well. So here's the thing. My podcast was so getting intimate with people and their true journey. And I felt like if you're going to pour your story out there, and people were counting on me and they were trusting me with their story and being so vulnerable, right? It had to be in person. They needed to feel my authenticity, that I genuinely wanted to know their story and share their most intimate things with the world, but in a loving way where their story becomes a vehicle to help others, right? And not exploiting them in any way. And I just felt like it was important to do it in person. Yeah. And this was before 2020. I mean, 2020 forced a lot of people to have to go online. And I get that. Luckily, there was a little bit of 2020 that I did. I had been doing audio for a very long time. So there was a point that I had to go to doing this sort of, Zoom calling and stuff at the same time with some phone conversations. I think the other thing too is that people started knowing my show for what it was. And so they were ready. When they came on my show, they were ready to share a lot of things. But in 2021, when I ended up getting the opportunity to sign with WWE, and put Chasing Glory on their platform on Peacock. And if for anybody out there that wants to experience Chasing Glory on a platform where you can actually see it, because I did audio for so many years, I think for 150 episodes, just audio. When I did, because at the very, very beginning, it was called Making Their Way to the Ring. That's the one that I had on video for a long, long time. Yeah. And I had that on video for a very long time. And then I went to Podcast One, which Podcast One only did audio. Then I left Podcast One, went back to video, where I'll never forget the head of Podcast One was like, you belong on video. This show belongs on video. So he was happy that I ended up leaving. But my whole thing is, it's so funny. As I was talking about this, I lost my train of thought somewhere. But help me out. What was I saying?
You were saying but I was going to say that, I'd love to hear who you, if people haven't seen Chasing Glory before, but are interested in kind of going back to the archives.
That's where I was going. Yeah.
For me, there are a few episodes that were standouts. So Bautista, as I mentioned, because that totally opened my eyes to a whole different person than the person I'd seen for all those years. But also, beautiful conversations with a very young Rhea Ripley, which I think for anyone who's seeing her now is kind of must see or must listen content, because she really goes raw. And also beautiful conversations you're having with Melina as well. I mean, I could pick hundreds, but
right.
they're for me, they're the standout ones of
Yeah.
just where friendship and broadcasting meet perfectly hand in hand.
Well, so I'll never forget Bautista. That's an audio, and Melina is an audio, and even the first Rhea Ripley is an audio. Those were all three just audio. But what I think was so special is I was live with them. Bautista came to where I lived in Marina Del Rey. I'll never forget. We were sitting on the couch just in the clubhouse, and it was empty, and we were just having this beautiful conversation. And then the next, because I interviewed him twice, the next one, I was in his hotel room. I think it was in New York City, and I was there for something. He was there for something, and we met up for a second one. Oh, I know what it was. It was WrestleMania. We met, I think it was the night before his final match at WrestleMania. Okay, I went to his hotel room and had this really intimate conversation about how he was feeling before getting into the ring for his final match. It's fascinating, both of those episodes, but I was live with them. And when you're live with someone, you can get so intimate, right? With Rhea, my very first one, actually, it is on video. It is on video. I went to NXT, and you can see that on my YouTube. So I went to NXT. Triple H invited me. I was so gracious. Like I asked him, I was like, hey, so is it cool someday for me to come to NXT and interview, some of your guests? So then he invited me. It was so awesome. I got to do a lot of them in person, and Rhea revealed a lot in that interview that she hadn't revealed before. And then fast forward, when the show got picked up to be on Peacock, her second interview in person is on Peacock. So that's what I was getting to before when I lost my train of thought. The last, what they call season one, which is the last 10 episodes that I did, which are really from 150 episode to 160 episode, those you can see on Peacock. But to go back and watch the first Rhea Ripley on YouTube and then go watch a second one on Peacock, wow, it's incredible the growth that this girl has done. But what she has shared, you will love her even more when you hear these. And that's what's
just
so
imagine
wonderful.
When she comes back to you for a third time, when you bring it back.
Yes, it's going to be so awesome interviewing so many of these again. We always learn, right? It's like peeling back the onions, and then how they've evolved and what they've learned in their continued chase for glory. It's awesome.
Yeah. And that's what you bring to the world. And I think that's why, from a keynote speaking standpoint, you've just got so much kind of curiosity and empathy for other people, but you also ultimately, I think what's special about you is you just want to empower people. You just want people to kind of live their best lives. I want to ask you about some really exciting news in your life. So anyone that follows you on social media will have seen you celebrating this. And I was so pleased for you. You're off to Egypt, my friend. What is going on? What's that all about?
I am. I'm so excited about this. So I've always wanted to do a missions trip, like just making an impact on people, going and helping people, and people they're very much living a completely different life. Now, I love helping people around my community. I will do that. I will volunteer, and I will go either to children's hospitals, or I'll go to feed the homeless or something, and serve. And you don't see me posting a lot about that itself, but I don't think it's all about posting all the time that you do things like this. And I'll do a lot of that stuff with the church. And I'll remember I even went to Mexico. I did post this. I thought it was so special. When I lived in California, we took a trip. I was in Southern California. So we just took in a van, a few of us. We went over the border through San Diego. I couldn't believe the difference of just crossing the border, the roads, the houses. Like, I literally was like, are we in a third world country? It was amazing. Wow. And I was thinking to myself, wow, these people that are facing San Diego, that see these beautiful homes, they have to look outside their windows and see how life is completely different. Just on the other side, it was wild. But I also saw the appreciation that these kids, so the church volunteered and gave away all this food and all that we were bringing, but also like blocks, like potato, Mr. Potato Head, things that the kids at that church back in America didn't want to. They were just like, I I want the fancier toys, right? We brought those toys over. To see the joy that just these simpler toys brought these kids was so beautiful. And that's why I like doing this, because sometimes it gives you perspective of realizing that you can get so much joy over the simple things. Yeah. So I'm going to go to Egypt. I've been there with WWE, but it was different, right? It was performing. It was there only for 2 days. I got to go to the pyramid, which was on my bucket list forever. So that was awesome that I got to do that. But in this, I'm going to be embedded for like 9 days into their culture. And it's going to be somewhere either in Cairo or right outside of Cairo. And so I'm just really excited to be there for them in any way that I can help. And one thing that I've always heard about these trips is that you're the one that comes back fulfilled. Yeah. So I'm really excited to see how my perspective is going to change, how my life is going to change too, and just open to whatever it is that God wants me to learn from this.
It's interesting. So picking up what you were saying about kind of children appreciating things that maybe in our society we don't appreciate. I mean, for the last 15 years or so, I've worked with Samaritan's Purse and Operation Christmas Child, and every year we go to the warehouse and we load up shoe boxes to go out to different parts of the world, and it's for simple things like a pair of socks, a pair of gloves, a few pieces of writing paper, some crayons, a small toy. More often than not, those toys are toys that come from my family's collection that my children don't play with, and
there you go,
incredible. And then you see the videos of the sheer joy that these children get opening up these boxes of things that in our Western society we take for granted. Something as simple as a tiny toy car or a little teddy bear or something like that. It just makes you realize we just have so much, and yet we all seem to want for so much when there's something to be said. I remember when I was in the townships of Cape Town years ago, and I just remember touring around the townships and meeting these families, and they had nothing. I mean, this one family they used tin foil for insulation, but they also used it for decoration. And these families I met were just the most beautiful, welcoming, dare I say, happy families. Yeah. Just look at our world and you think we are never happy. We're never satisfied. We're always wanting more. And there's something, I know it shouldn't be for our gain, but I think the amount you'll probably gain from that experience will be so much in terms of perspective, and I'm sure it will do, bring just as much to you as it does to those that you're impacting over there.
Yeah, let me tell you something. Right now, we just got through a really bad storm here with hurricane. I don't know if it's pronounced Helena. I think it's Helena or Helene. Anyway, a really bad hurricane. And it impacted, I believe it was 4 states. It impacted Florida, it impacted North Carolina, South Carolina, I think it's more 5 states, Georgia and Tennessee. And I don't know if I'm missing anybody there, but it really devastated a lot of towns. I mean, some of them are completely wiped out. And we wonder, why do storms have to come? Why do we have to, go through these things? And I've encountered my own storms, right? Of, like I told you, losing my parents and losing my marriage and losing my job because I lost my voice because of a gas leak that I didn't know I had for 4 months. So I lost the opportunity to continue to announce for the PFL. I moved like 4 or 5 times within a year. Like there was just so many storms that were coming up that I'm like, how much more can I handle? But at the same time, I realized, wow, Lil, you're still here. You still have a roof over your head. You've managed to put food on the table every single day. You're more capable than what you think. And I've been stripped of a lot as well. So I'm back to the basics. And there is a gift to being back to the basics. And I've also realized that it's not all about what you have, material things. I can't tell you, Ben, how many amazing friends I have now that I have along the way, just acquired along the way, and really been very selective as to who I allow in my life. Yeah. And I'm like, I am so rich. When you look at like the amount of friends that I have and my faith is also been stronger now than ever. And you would think it would be the opposite, but sometimes we have to be stripped of a lot to then get to the fundamental as to what is really important. And so these families that have lost a lot in these, the whole houses, all of that, I think the gift in some of this, and it's hard to see it in the moment. Let me tell you, it's hard. And I don't wish it on anyone, but if you're in that storm, start to look for what is the gift in this. And I think some of them, it's the first time they've ever met their neighbor. And they're having to rely on each other. If you see in a lot of these storms, it's people saving people. It's people coming together, the community holding hands, praying. Like I said, some of them have never met each other. They just get so consumed in their little bubbles. And I think that more than anything, people are starting to learn that community, getting to know your neighbors and getting to be there for each other, not when it's like the worst catastrophe and storms. That's what's important in life, not how many cars you have, how many watches you have, what your clothes are. All of that is going to just go away one day. It's just not, it doesn't matter. Don't put the emphasis on that.
But we forget, don't we? I mean, we had all these amazing revelations in COVID at the start of lockdown. It was like, oh, actually, appreciate what you've got, be in your community, bring in your neighborhood. And then the world goes back to normal and you forget. And it's almost like as human beings, we need disasters to suddenly remember again to shrink.
We need those constant reminders. It's awful. It's awful.
Really
we are stubborn. We are so stubborn. But it's okay. It's okay. That's why sometimes God allows things to happen. People wonder about that. Why is this being allowed to happen? Why? Well, because we have to. Otherwise, we don't appreciate. If everything was just rosy all the time, I'm telling you, we would not be speaking to our neighbor, and that's not good.
No. Well, I appreciate all of the positivity and inspiration you're looking at, putting that in the world. But now it's time to talk a bit of wrestling. Are you ready to go for a trip down memory lane, Lilian Garcia?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so my first question is that, and I forgot completely about this until I was doing some research, but you managed to go through most of your WWE career kind of avoiding any in-ring physicality, but your very first angle involved Jeff Jarrett placing you in a figure 4 leg lock. I mean, what was that experience like with Jeff? And when that was happening, were you kind of thinking, what the heck have I got myself into here?
Well, that when you say that, I actually, did you say that I avoided being in the ring for most of my career?
No, you took a fair few bumps along the way, but
a lot,
not as many as maybe you'd expect over how long you're in WWE. But there were
I took a lot. Let me tell you something. When we did the 25-year countdown, and we showed all these clips, I couldn't believe how many storylines I had been involved in. I forgot how many storylines. I forgot how many bumps I took. But it was so fun. And so it was just month number 2. Like I got there August 23rd of 99. And in September, I was thrown into a figure 4. And they asked me, it was a whole Jeff Jarrett angle where I think he was going against China at the time. And so it was like he was picking different females to do these things, and China could go in and, save the day kind of deal, or to infuriate her even more. But they asked me, they're like, hey, do you mind us, putting you in the figure 4? They showed me who had got it the week before. And I think it might have been, the seamstress the week before. But anyway, when I saw it, I'm like, oh, I could totally do that. Like I loved I've always been athletic in my life. So I loved like having the opportunity to do that. To me, it was fun. I didn't want to be a wrestler full time, but being thrown in every now and then, totally up my alley. So it was so fun. He never hurt me, by the way. That was all me acting. And it looked so real. And people were like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. He totally is awesome. But it was fun. And that just kind of led, when they saw my excitement and they saw how I could actually pull it off and make it look like I was dying, then they started throwing me into more storylines.
Did you ever think that maybe I could move into wrestling as a in-ring talent?
No, they asked me if I wanted to do that. But boy, when I saw what it took to be a wrestler, I was like, okay, I have to choose. I don't feel like I can be a ring announcer, and I loved being a ring announcer. I thought it was so much fun. It was just like, I get to be, it's almost like, The Greatest Showman, right? Where you're like the host of the show and you're setting the stage. I mean, it's just so awesome. It's such a fun job. So I loved it so much. And I was like, okay, there was so much to learn on that. And I was learning on the job that I was like, there's no way that I could do this and also sing, because singing has always been, the forefront of my entire career. Just something that's so important to me. So I knew that I wanted to continue to sing. I felt like there's no way that I can do that and then become a full-time wrestler and be good at any of them. So I was like, I don't mind if you guys throw me in every now and then, and I'll do the best that I can. And then, but yeah, no. And I also didn't think it was fair for me to learn 2 or 3 moves, have a match, and then call myself a wrestler. I was like, no way, because the time and commitment that it takes to be a wrestler, I didn't want to take that away from anybody.
But did you learn to take bumps? Did you learn to take flat backs and all that kind of stuff to be safe, or did you just literally
Nope, none of it. Just everything that you saw me was right then in the spot that we did. The only move that I practiced was taking the Samoan drop from at the time he was Jamal, and then later he was 3-minute Umaga. But we practiced it, and man, did it look amazing. The only thing is we practiced it on a mat, something very cushy that we lay on our practice mat. When I actually did it that night, I didn't realize that the ring does not have any cushions. I didn't realize that the ring is actually board, like plywood board, which is why you hear the slam, which is a whole nother respect that I got for the wrestlers when I said, you guys sign up for this, to do this. Now that one hurt. I'm not going to lie. That one hurt. And there was no way that he could have protected me on that move. It is what it is. I mean, I went from way up high to slamming down. And the next day I felt like a Mack truck hit me because I wasn't used to it. Right. But boy, does it look good. God, I'm still so glad I did it. It looks so good. And it was a lot of fun.
That 3-minute warning gimmick was brilliant. I mean, it didn't last long, but it's still one I really fondly remember all these years on. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it really was. And then when he lands on me and he does the splash, it looks like that looked even worse than the original, but that one didn't even hurt at all. I mean, he was perfectly landed, but he didn't touch me, which is crazy to think when you see it.
Incredible skill. And then, obviously you're synonymous with, the singing the national anthem. And that all began, the first time was at a WWE house show in February 2000. As I've heard, Vince McMahon loved your performance so much so that you start doing it before every single Raw. And then you're at WrestleMania 2000. Do you have any idea how many times you sang the national anthem over your years of WWE?
No, we were going to actually, by the time we thought about it, we were like, oh, we should see about putting this in the Guinness Book of World Records. Like, it's got to be the most national anthems at a public forum, right? Yeah. But unfortunately, when we did contact the Guinness Book of World Records, they said, well, we have to have it logged in every single performance that she's ever done with how many people were in attendance that night. And we have to have proof that she actually performed it. And we didn't have that. We didn't know to start recording, every single show that I had ever done, and the live event, even the live event shows that were just for the people in the arena. So I didn't get to do that, but I have no idea. Like, I have no idea.
I think you've got the record.
So many people say, like, there's no way somebody has surpassed you. Yeah, because it was almost like 15 years worth of singing the national anthem at every single event.
Yeah, and you did it often for SmackDown as well, didn't you? It wasn't just Raw, it was then SmackDown as well. It depended. That sometimes I did it for SmackDown as well. Sometimes I then also did it for the pay-per-views right before we went on the air. And then that was the other thing, doing that 25th year anniversary countdown, I didn't realize how many times I'd actually done it on air. I didn't realize, like, all the tribute to the troops, 3 WrestleManias holding the record for that. And it wasn't even just the national anthem, but America the Beautiful, right? A mix of both. But I didn't realize how many times I had actually sang on the show, which was so special. So can you remember who suggested you perform at WrestleMania 2000 then? And how that came about?
So I just remember that Rock was the original one that told me, hey, you're getting ready to do, because Howard Finkel always did the live events over the weekend, and I would do Monday Night Raw. And then I would do SmackDown. I'd do the backstage interviewing. So I just remembered I was filling in for Howard one weekend. And Rock told me, he's like, we always play the national anthem instrumentally before we start the show. He's like, why don't you go and find the producers and ask them if maybe you can sing it? And he goes, because you sang it, right? And I said, yeah, I sang it for my senior year, for the graduation of my senior year. So I went ahead and found the producers, and they're like, oh, well, we'd love for you to do this. So I did it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. By then, they went over to Vince McMahon on that Monday. They're like, she's incredible. Vince is like, okay, I got to see this for myself, which was San Jose, California. I did it that night. And then that's when he suggested, okay, I'm going to have you do it at every single event. And that was February of 2000. And then I think it's either my boss. I would think it's either my boss at the time was Kevin Dunn. Either it was him or Vince that told me, we'd like for you to do it at WrestleMania for 2000. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh. But then let me tell you something. I feel like God was preparing me for sure for when a year later I would need to perform it live for, 2 days after the 9/11 attacks. The fact that I had been in front of our audience singing it that many times, and it's almost like it definitely was getting me ready, because that moment was so scary and so intense. And I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders, representing America with the most important song at the most important time after, being such a huge attack on our homeland, that I look back and I went, oh, that's why all of this was happening. Wow. It's wild.
It's a performance that still gives me goosebumps, not just yourself, but just seeing everyone on that ramp and just the emotion of everyone, and the sheer bravery of everyone, including every fan that went into
that even showed up.
Night. Yeah,
that showed up for sure.
I don't know that I would have had the guts to do it. I'm going to be honest with you. 2 days after that, it was just an incredible kind of celebration of the human spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, that you felt the energy of unity. You felt the need to heal. Yeah. And that's what I felt like I was put into that position to do. And I was so honored, very scared, but very honored.
I'm glad you brought up The Rock, because, it sounds like, so The Rock is to blame for, and also to thank for you doing thousands of national anthems. But the chemistry that you had with The Rock was just legendary. And I've always wanted to know, and now I get to ask it, how, Lilian Garcia, did you manage to keep a straight face when The Rock was talking to you about the people's strudel?
I can't believe that the people's strudel was actually born in that interview. We would never be able to do anything like that now in our PG days. There's no way. But at the time, it was just slapstick. It was funny. And I would say it was, the years of acting came into play. I had to go into my actress mode. But let me tell you, when they yelled cut, hysterical. We were both laughing so hard. And I love the fact that he always wanted to do these live, because some of the backstage interviews were pre-recorded because of time. We had to. But with him, he's like, nope, we got to do this live. I want to feed off the crowd. We always had to find somewhere backstage that was close to a door where he could actually hear the fans, because he reacted a lot to them.
Wow. And
in that interview, you could see he's like, and he's hearing and he's reacting to the crowd, and the crowd is reacting to him. So it was wild. I just knew that I had to stay in character. There's no way that I was going to break character. No. And that's the thing, is anytime I did those interviews, I went into my acting character mode of reporter, and a reporter does not break that acting wall.
I think that's why it worked so well. Like when you did like your beer bash with Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think fans loved that so much, because it was like it was Lilian Garcia, and suddenly you were seeing this different side to you for just a minute before you went back to being, the consummate,
the ring announcer.
Yeah. I love that.
And a lot of people didn't realize why I started pouring beer down my dress or my shirt or whatever, is because at that time I had such an allergy to mold. I had lived in a house with high levels of mold. I got mold poisoning. Nobody at that time was talking about mold, and nobody knew the impact of mold and mold in a home and what it does. And so I didn't know what was going on, right, in my body. I just knew that I was having these severe reactions. I was on antibiotics every 3 weeks. And here I was trying to announce, and I was constantly inflamed. It was a really brutal time in my life. But I remember the doctor telling me, okay, I'm going to put you on the mold-free diet. Follow this really, really strict. Don't deviate from it, and let's see. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, it was like night and day. My voice came back. It was great. Wow. But anytime I had any of those foods that were on that list, my body thought mold was reacting, and it created histamines like crazy. So I didn't know that there was mold properties in food. So yeast is one of them. And so my doctor was like, don't have any yeast, don't have any yeast. Well, what's in beer? Like, I think it's the number one ingredient in beer is yeast. So when he's inviting me to have beers with him in the ring, I'm like, how am I going to go? You know what? I have a mold allergy, so therefore I can't do that. Oh my God, it would have been the end of me.
That is a one-way ticket to a Stone Cold Stunner, isn't it? Right there.
Right there. Stone Cold Stunner, right? So it's almost like going back to the tape. Let's think something really fast on the spot. And I went, all right, I am going to close up my throat, and anything that goes in my mouth, I'm going to spit it out, but like just let it drool all over me. And that's why you see me taking it in, but I'm allowing it to go right down my shirt. And then like this, I never swallowed any of that beer, and I was fine. And then it became a thing. And so he loved it so much. He's like, that's kind of cool. And then it ended up playing into Memorial Day when we did it, and we sang America the Beautiful together. And then sure enough, the beer celebration, and then he comes over and pours it. And yeah, nobody knew until I started doing these interviews after I left. Nobody knew why that was happening. That's why. You can thank my mold allergy for that one.
There you go. So it wasn't just an aversion to Steve Weiser's. I love that.
Nope, not at all. And it wasn't an aversion to, like, I didn't like to drink or anything like that. Like I was, I went to college. I didn't mind having a beer here or there, but man, I had to think on the spot. Yeah, I'm just glad that I did. I'm glad that came to my mind, and that's because it was a lot of fun times with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking of fun times, another thing that I'd completely forgotten about until I started prepping today, your on-screen romance with Big Daddy V Viscera. That went out of my memory. As soon as I read it, I was like, what? Oh yeah, that storyline. Can you remember who pitched that creative to you, and what was Viscera like to work with?
Well, it's so funny because it wasn't supposed to turn into any storyline. They just said, we're going to turn him into the ladies' man. We want to change his persona. He's going to start coming out with a robe and just being like, he's just the ladies' man. Yeah. So we want to use you, and we want to have it where he serenades you. And he came out singing the song. What was it? My darling, I can't get enough of your love, baby. Can't get enough of your love, baby. Yeah. And which I don't think you can find that anymore right now. And that's because of copyrights, because of the music rights. They had to take that whole scene out. But he serenades me. Well, that ended up getting such a huge rating, by the way. And at that time, we could see all these ratings, and it was all about what are the ratings. And it got such a huge rating that they were like, oh, wait a minute. The fans kind of like this. Let's see where we're going to take this. And so it turned into a full-blown storyline. And next thing you know, it was like, okay, we're going to hold off on this ladies' man. We're just going to turn it into like this Beauty and the Beast kind of thing. Of course, he was the beauty. And it worked. And I loved working with him. God rest his soul. Seriously, he was such a big teddy bear, and we had so much fun. And he would just come over to me so many times going, thank you so much for doing this, because I know this isn't part of your story or your work or whatever. And I'm like, are you kidding? This is so much fun. And if I could do anything to help your character, I'm here. And that's the way that I saw it, that I was there to like help them out in any way that I could, because then a lot of times they didn't expect for the ring announcer to be involved. And so that's what made it even more fun.
Yeah, and the reason that it's kind of a bit of a blank spot for me and I had to go back to it was because actually during that period in 2005, I was ironically traveling around the States for about 6 months, working at a summer camp and then traveling afterwards. So that was the only gap in 30 years where actually WWE kind of passed me by, and I had to
Oh,
spend some
wow.
time kind of going home and kind of fast
Hmm.
watching VHS of Raw and SmackDown to catch up because it was the one time in my life where I wasn't watching wrestling every week. And it was actually a brilliant year for wrestling. I missed a lot of it. But I do remember kind of going back on that and being like, it's just such a wonderful odd couple pairing. And everything I've ever heard of Viscera was just really good things. That he was just a good, gentle dude.
Absolutely. He was awesome.
So the other thing I have to ask you about, and I know you've done a lot of interviews recently and you've been asked about this by a lot of people, but I'm going to ask you about it now.
Okay.
The Triple H story. What's the real story behind you announcing the game as the former world heavyweight champion and him absolutely flipping out on you?
You know that emoji?
Yeah.
I have not let that one out of the bag. And it's actually fun not to let that one out of the bag.
One day.
I realized I'm like, this is the one story that I really haven't given like a lot of the behind the scenes and whether it was planned or not planned. And so many people wonder. And I thought, I'll never forget my boss telling me, he said to me, he goes, what makes wrestling so much fun is they know, a lot of people know that a lot of things are scripted, but then there'll be those few things that people go, wait, was that scripted or was that by accident? Was that supposed to happen or is that, and he goes, those are the moments that we got them, right? And some legit things happen by accident for sure. So that one I've decided I'm not gonna say anything.
Well, as much
And
as
other people have tried. Good try, Ben.
thank you. And as much as I want it for an exclusive, I want to hear the full story when you finally get your long-awaited, long-deserved moment up there on the Hall of Fame stage, which will happen. I'm absolutely positive. And when it happens, I want to hear that story because there's never going to be a moment like that moment to say it right in front of him. So that's my challenge to you. I think you should. I think let the world know because that's the story everyone wants to know about.
I got to tell you something. I really want to thank you for saying that. I want to thank all the fans that have written, all the other interviews that I've done. They always bring the Hall of Fame up, and I'm like, wow, the fact you guys feel that I should be in the Hall of Fame, and so many saying, why hasn't it happened? That right there gives me so much like appreciation and just honored. And man, it's like, wow, I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful that I could bring something to this amazing platform of wrestling, right? Like seeing it with my dad as a kid. Can you imagine how my dad felt when he was sitting in the front row and he got to meet Ric Flair, by the way? I made that happen backstage, I went, wow, Dad, like from us watching and yelling at the TV and you taking me to the Township Auditorium. And now here I am introducing Ric Flair and introducing all these other superstars. I mean, it's been in my life since I was a little girl. And then now for you guys to talk about Hall of Fame, I mean, man, that would be incredible. Obviously, it's up to WWE. I would just very, very honored if that happens. And I just appreciate that you guys are even bringing it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I made you feel really old before when we last spoke, but you are my Howard Finkel. I think that's the thing. Like, I mean, I was a fan for obviously years before you entered WWE, but for me, your voice represents probably my peak time as a wrestling fan. My best memories as a kind of teenager watching wrestling always had your voice in it. So it's going to happen. It's just a case of when.
Cool.
But I mean, it was really obvious. I was smiling from ear to ear. Now that I know you personally, it was so special to see you get your moment back on Raw earlier this year in May, and to have you sharing a ring alongside Samantha Irvin, and you could just hear from the crowd. There's so much love for you and what you brought to the ring, but you're also getting to spend time with this incredible talent. I mean, Samantha's performances blow me away. When I was there and getting to experience WrestleMania for the first time this year live, I mean, that lady is a machine. I mean, not just what people see on air, but what she does to I hype up the crowd before you go on air.
Yeah.
What she does to let the crowd down at the end of the night. There she is on SmackDown. There she is on Raw. I mean, I don't know how she does it, but she's incredible.
Well, she's not on SmackDown because that's Alicia.
Oh, okay.
So Alicia was on SmackDown. Yeah.
Correction.
Yeah.
But very, just so talented. How was it like to kind of go back? Was it Triple H that invited you back? And also, what was it like to kind of spend that time in a ring again?
So it was wild because I was living in South Carolina at the time. I'd gone back to empty my parents' house and to take care of that. And I heard that they were going to be in Greenville, and Columbia and Greenville are only an hour and a half away. So when I found out that we're going to be in Greenville, and I hadn't been backstage in a really long time, I contacted Triple H and I just said, hey, I'm so excited. Like, you guys are going to be an hour and a half away from me. Do you mind if I come by and say hi? And he's like, absolutely, come by. Like, we miss you. I would love to see you. So I went backstage, and it was just later on in the day that he goes, I have an idea. I don't know do you want to be on the show tonight? And I'm like, whatever you need, I'm here. And then he ran that idea by me just to co-announce with Sam. And it was so fun. I mean, she's just been so gracious. Anytime I've seen, I remember the very first time I met her, she was just so giddy. And we took a photo together, and she's like, you don't understand. Like, I watched you, my entire childhood, and just, I want to be you. And I went, that's amazing, right? That you're telling me this and that I could impact somebody. And I said, and just remember, you be you, right? I had my era, I had my sound, my whatever. I now want you to be you. You get to create your sound, your rhythms, your impact as to what you're going to do in this time and period that you have.
And she gets to leave that for another young lady as well, doesn't she? 15, 20 years down the line.
That's what I told her. Yeah. That's exactly what I told her. I said, you're going to be impacting the next generation. And that's what's so fun. I said, somebody's watching you right now. There's a girl out there watching you going, I want to be the next Sam, So she goes, really? And I'm like, absolutely. Just like you said that I did that for you, right? So that's what's so great. And she's been awesome at her job. And then I love that Alicia got put on SmackDown, and she's also incredible at her job. And just both of them are so passionate for what they do. They love the job. And that's the first thing, is to love the job, appreciate it, don't take it for granted, embrace it, and then create your own sound. And I think they both have done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I had an incredible blueprint to follow in you. And,
Thank you.
As I said last time, I'll say it again this time. Thank you for, awesome memories and just being such a great force within the world of wrestling. You recently posted a video called What's Next for Lilian Garcia. What is next for Lilian Garcia?
Well, it's funny because I think I'm going to retitle it. And it's because it gives the impression that I'm just getting into the speaking business. And it's not. It's not something that I've just started, but it's something that I'm definitely going to elaborate more on. I got to speak, like we talked about at the beginning of this interview, I got to speak at these, whether it was schools or whether it was charity events or corporate. But now I'm going all in. Like, now I really want to do more of it. And also want to bring Chase and Glory back and continue my singing. And what I love about the singing part of it is the fact that I'm doing it more faith-based. When I feel like saved. When I was at the lowest of the lowest, this is after I gave up Chase and Glory, after my dad passed, after my mom passed, after my marriage fell apart. All of that led me to a friend extending her hand and saying, hey, do you want to come to church with me? And I was like, well, what church do you go to? And at the time I wasn't actively in church. And she goes, yeah, I go to Mariners. It's non-denominational. I think you really like it. When I walked in those doors and that music hit me, I'd never been to a non-denominational church. I'd never been to a mega church. I'd never been to any of this. And when because I grew up Catholic. Oh, the difference between a Catholic church to this is night and day. Let me just tell you. But when I walked in and that music hit me, what they call worship music, and it was pop rock, and it was all worshiping God, but it was so cool, and it was a full band and lights and a stage and all that. I'm like, what is happening right now? Yep. And that was it. I was sold, and then the message was so incredible that the pastor gave, and I said, I got to come back. And by week 2, it was like, I just felt like Jesus was like, I need you up there. So I went and inquired about how I joined the band, and they held an audition for me, and I was instantly in. And then that turned into like close to almost 2 years there. And then going to South Carolina, I found a church there and I joined their band there. And then now in Georgia, I'm getting ready to, in November, I'll be joining a church here and joining their worship team. And I love it. I think that the music really suits me. My style of singing, I feel like really suits me. And what I've made a promise to myself is that every Sunday, I am posting a different bit of a worship song. And this past Sunday, I just did it, and it was all about the storm and a song. And, I brought in pictures of everything that had happened, but it was called Firm Foundation, and about like when you're feeling everything crumble, your firm foundation can be God. And for me, it has to be God. And what I have gained from that. And that's what I just want to do, is just use my voice and whatever I can and spreading positivity. And then when it comes to singing, doing it in a way that is all about his glory, right? And pushing his glory and what that's done. I'm only sharing what it's done to my life. I don't force this on anyone. I don't ever want to say this is the only way. Like, I don't want people to feel so pushed into it that they end up being turned off by it. And I think that as Christians, we need to just have a lot of compassion and meet people where they're at and just pour love into them, but not judgment on them, and don't force anything on them.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think that's a perfect way to wrap up. Your website, liliangarcia.com, is got so much information about what you're doing now, and where to find you, where to book you. I know you're doing cameos as well. Like, what are the best ways for my audience to kind of follow you and support you and follow your journey, Lilian?
Yeah, Instagram seems to be like the channel that I'm mostly on, for sure. I have everything on every platform, but at Lilian Garcia with one L in the middle, that is where you can find me, mostly on Instagram. And, I dabble in Facebook a little bit, but not that much. Haven't dabbled in Twitter in a while, or I should say X in a while, every now and then. But yeah, Instagram's mostly where I'm at. And then, I'm a little bit on LinkedIn and I'm trying to get more on that because of these corporations where they're at. That's a whole nother beast that I'm trying to learn, but I'm giving myself grace while I'm learning it. I appreciate the help that you've given me thus far on there too.
You're welcome.
And I think definitely staying. And if anybody wants to bring me into your organization or to your school or to your church to speak, or even to sing at your church, go to booking@liliangarcia.com. That's booking, no S on that, just booking@liliangarcia.com. And like I said, Lilian with one L in the middle. And then send an email to my team as to where you would like for me to go. And then they can get back in touch with you and work all the details out. And that way I can come to your place and try to make impact there. That's that's my whole goal in life, is to try to make as much impact as I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lilian, for being so awesome, for being a wonderful guest once again. I'm so glad we got to do this and talk a lot more wrestling this time.
Me too.
Thank you for the positivity you're bringing to the world, and thank you for your friendship.
Thank you to all of you. I appreciate you so much.
And on the subject of thanks, I always do this, Lilian. Thank you to my brilliant producer, Jeff Easton from Tall Lake Production. Can I get a shout out for Jeff, please?
Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for everything you do. I know what it's like. The behind the scenes people are so, so important. So thank you, Jeff.
Thank you to all of you for tuning in today. As me and Lilian have talked about, there's a lot that goes into podcasts. So really appreciate all of your subscribes, or your likes, or your nice comments, or your ratings. Really helps us to grow. But that is it for today's episode of Wrestling Life. I've been Ben Veal. My special guest has been the one, the only Lilian Garcia. This has been Wrestling Life. So until next time, be good to each other, and I'll see you soon. Bye.